Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. That's my Bigfoot sing-along.
Is that
Bigfoot
how the
whoops.
Bigfoot do? He whoops.
He just goes whoop, 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 whoop. No, he does various things. He talks like a samurai. He throws rocks at you.
Uh-huh.
And he whoops. Those are the main things he does. In fact, I wrote a little song about it. You ready?
Yeah, dude, I'm ready.
All right, let's see. Am I in tune? Close enough. All right. Mr. Patterson, please leave me alone. Your friend Gimli too, I wish you'd both go home, because I find your gorilla suit offensive in tone. Just wanna be one of you guys. Yes, I talk like a samurai. Don't hold it against me, I'm just that kind of guy, and I know that we will survive. At least I hope we will. Knock on wood, Bigfoot. I can't buy no shoes. Tired of walking around on all the stuff that hikers lose. If you could see my face, you'd know we're just the same. Just one big hairy guy doing my best to get by. That's me and Suplex wrote that some time ago.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Working on an album of American cryptid songs, because that hasn't been written yet, surprisingly.
Really?
You know, you'd think that someone would have written folk songs of American monsters, but it didn't happen.
Sounds like now's the time.
I know. We got that one, and we did the Mothman one, because it has to be a little creepier, you know.
Right.
Because Mothman's scary. I'm trying to remember how it goes, actually. I think it's red eyes stalk you through the night. Bridge is gonna fall, gonna kill us all. You know, the Silver Bridge collapsed with the sighting of the Mothman. Anyway, that's for another show.
I think we need to produce that album.
We're working on it, but right now it's only got 2 or 3 songs.
Well,
so
get busy.
Yeah, I think maybe Champ from the Champlain Lake Monster. Maybe, probably. Skinwalkers from Skinwalker Ranch, obviously.
Yes.
Who else would be a good?
What about
the Jersey Devil?
Devil. What about Wampus Kitty? Are you familiar with Wampus Kitty?
Wampus Kitty, yeah. The Mobile Leprechaun.
Oh, got to. Yes. I want the gold.
The problem with the Jersey Devil is he bears so many resemblances to the Mothman, that it'd be almost like writing a song like Bigfoot and then one about Sasquatch, because I think they're probably the same.
Okay. Mothman just gets around a little bit.
Well, he was in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, originally.
Okay.
The original Mothman sightings, but which is everything about that case is so good because all the names fit. It's like in Point Pleasant in this little tiny off the way town, and then the bridge collapses after he's seen on the bridge and all the people die. It's just very like Southern Gothic.
It sounds kind of like a Twin Peaks David Lynch kind of style.
Yeah, 100%. People citing the Mothman outside of what they called, what was it, the TNT depot, where they used to keep all the explosives for the mining operations and stuff. It's great. The first sighting was a gravedigger at like 2 a.m.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a perfect case. But the Jersey Devil, in contrast, isn't. But they look very, same glowing red eyes. I like Bigfoot. Strangely, all these things seem to have glowing red eyes. But today is a Bigfoot show. Sasquatch, if you're a professional.
Oh, so like Bigfoot is for the plebs and Sasquatch is the academics?
Well, yeah. Well, the people that take Bigfoot very seriously, they call him Sasquatch. That's his scientific name.
Okay.
Like his Latin name, and also the name given to him by the Native Americans. One of the things they always like to do, and this is true of all paranormality in the United States, is everyone likes to give it authenticity by referring to some obscure Native American legend about it.
Okay.
Like it seems like every ghost sighting is like, oh well, there are Native American burial grounds nearby.
Like they knew. Yeah.
It's like I don't know why that always has to be brought up, or like the Native American mounds.
Right.
And it is true that almost every Native American tribe talked about a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch-like character.
Okay.
And most of them considered him to be just another tribe of Indians that hadn't yet discovered fire.
Interesting.
But he also in most of the legends appears to have some sort of magic power. It's just how it goes. They didn't all call him Sasquatch. That's like one group, and they certainly didn't all have the same opinions about him. But Sasquatchers like to be like, Native Americans said, and then you're talking about like several different tribes that all had different Sasquatch traditions.
Okay.
And I'm a traditionalist. I like to have all the Sasquatch traditions. The Wedingo, the Yowie, all of them.
Yeah.
Even though the Yowie's Australian, but whatever. But today, before we do that, we're going to go full schizophrenia.
Okay. I'm ready.
Because, you know what schizophrenia is? Yeah, it's like the there's two different basic mental illnesses.
Okay.
There's autism and there's schizophrenia. And in my cosmology, everything is just on a spectrum between those two.
Okay.
Right? Like autism is extreme male brainness. Like systematizing everything. Everything's in a category.
Right.
Everything is it's very geared. Like, if you want to build an engine, if you want to build a computer, you need to be highly autistic.
Okay.
Schizophrenia is extreme female brain, where you see like relationships and everything. This is where pareidolia comes in, like you're seeing the face of Jesus in like your coffee, or marrying a burned piece of toast. It's just you're recognizing of patterns, and you tend to ascribe agency where there is none, right? Schizophrenia, like you think everyone's stalking you. You think the radio turns on and it's talking to you personally. You tend to, think maybe the trees have something against you.
So this is interesting because it's like one end is divide everything and the other end is connect everything on your spectrum here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And sanity, it's left brain, right brain. This is like when and one side of your brain is just like totally beating up the other side.
Okay.
Right. If you're an autist, your left brain is just like got your right brain in a chokehold, and the other one, if you're the other side, it's the other side. You know, it's flip flop.
Right.
But today we're going to go full schizophrenia.
Okay.
Because Owen Benjamin sent me on this. In full disclosure, I was listening to some of his streams this week, and he said some good things, and I'm going to talk about some of the good things he talked about, parrot a few of them, and then give some. And then I'm going to talk, and then I'm going to look at it through the lens of Hinduism.
All right.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. But here's the thing, guys. So there's a lot of black pilling right now. Because the country's falling apart. Yeah. And people are like, this seems bad. Mm-hmm. But I just want to go through a few things with you. Okay, so here's an article. It was I think this was in the New York Times and the New York Post. Okay. And it was about a Black Lives Matter protester. A black guy, they show him with a camo face mask. Mm-hmm. Because you got to, while you're protesting, you want to maintain social distance.
That's right, of course.
And they said he was arrested after making a threat on television to burn down Manhattan's Diamond District, which, if you know anything about Manhattan, is a heavily Jew district. It's where a lot of Jews live. Yep. Right? Have you heard this one before?
I have. I'm so excited about the punchline.
So, and then they said, and they say, so they start the thing. This is Burns, named Burns 34. And you read down in the article, and his name is Israel Burns.
Israel Burns.
So a guy named Israel Burns is threatening to burn down
Burns.
The Jewish center of Hollywood. Okay, let's keep going. So there was another one. This one was pretty good. Okay. George Floyd's second grade teacher was apparently a very thoughtful and compassionate woman, and she kept, and he was in his 40s, so they say, right, or something like that. So for like 30 plus years, she's kept George Floyd's essays and drawings and had them filed away nicely, just ready to pull them out for when this happened.
Amazing. That's so convenient that she kept all that.
Amazing. And also amazingly is that she, if you want to look at the photo, go look at some of the people that were crying in the news during the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida. And it's the same looking woman with slightly different hair. And I mean, like, really the same woman. Like, it looks very much the same. And also, George Floyd's second grade teacher, which kept random students' essays, and the guys, teachers don't care about you that much, essays and drawings about what he wanted to be when he grew up for 30 plus years. Her name is, according to the news, Waynell Sexton.
Waynell?
No one is named Waynell. If you Google Waynell Sexton,
like Waynell, maybe.
Yeah, like you could maybe pronounce it Waynell, but no one's named Waynell either. It when you just read it, it's like Waynell. And then she's the only result that comes up, and she has a Facebook page clearly made like 3 days ago with her and another man and a white dog on the bed.
Waynell
Sexton.
Waynell Sexton. Amazing. Sexton. So it just occurred to me. All right, I've seen pictures of this lady. She was George Floyd's second grade teacher.
Right.
So second grade, that's like 7 years old. Okay. So that she would have been, I'm just guessing, what, 13 years old when George Floyd was 7? Or maybe she would have been like 10. She didn't look that old.
She's not old enough.
She's maybe in her mid 40s, late 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe early 50s if she's very well kept.
George Floyd's second grade teacher should be an old lady.
Yes. this lady that's another thing. She's as old as George Floyd. It's not, maybe slightly older.
This is
It
so
doesn't,
retarded. And let me just
like,
say,
she,
I'm married to a former public school teacher. They don't keep your stuff. They don't keep your cute little drawings and things that you do. I'm sorry, they don't. There's no room for all that, and they're not that attached to your children. Okay, it's just
right.
they're not gonna keep it. Oh man.
Okay, so I went back in time. I was looking because that lady was on the Pulse nightclub shooting. Okay, so
Wait, no. She took some sort of part in the Pulse propaganda
George
too.
Floyd's second grade teacher looks suspiciously like one of the women interviewed outside the Pulse nightclub that was all crying about how many people were shot. Okay. In the New York Times, 2016, 6/15, so 6/15/2016, they wrote an article called, and you can look all this up, by the way, I'm not making it up. They wrote an article, it's called Orlando Injuries Were Severe, but Trauma Care Was Nearby, ... Okay. One of the people that survived the attack was a lady named Angel Colon. Colon. Angel Colon. Guess who she was treated by at the Orlando Regional Medical Center?
Harry Dix. Dr. Harry Dix.
Dr. Matthew Lube.
Matthew Lube.
So Angel Colon was treated by Dr. Matthew Lube. Okay.
At a gay nightclub shooting.
At a gay nightclub shooting. Waynell Sexton. All right. Again.
Waynell Sexton. I can't handle this, man.
I know. Owen collected all these, and I'm just sort of going through them because he did a great job collecting them. He and the Bears.
Okay.
All right. Another one. Country hitmaker. So this is a guy. He's not like I don't believe he's like a singer. He's a hitmaker. Like he produces country music.
Sure. Yeah.
The title of this one is Country Hitmaker Shane McAnally on Coming Out as Gay.
Shane McAnally?
Mick, MC, and then capital ANALLY. No one's actually has that name. No one's named Angel Colon. That Waynell Sexton. Okay.
It's Angel Colon. Spanish, dude. Come on.
Okay. This was in the Associated Press.
Okay.
Sex gets Olympic boxer Virginia fucks out of doping ban. FUCHS. Sex gets Olympic boxer Virginia Virgin. It's
yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then we've got okay. Then all right. Time magazine. January 27th, 2015. There are just 100,000 Holocaust survivors alive today. That makes some sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a lot still to be alive from that time. But Jerusalem Post, January 18, 2020, 5 years later,
5 years later,
there are 192,000 Holocaust survivors.
Wow, where'd they come from?
They doubled.
They doubled.
It's really interesting. The June 9th, 2020, a member of the DC National Guard was talking about the this was a National Guard at the protest where Trump, did the walk to the church. Okay. Private C. Kenya Lynch. S.I. apostrophe Kenya, like the country, S.I. apostrophe Kenya, space, last name Lynch, as in lynching. C. Kenya Lynch. C. Kenya Lynch. Okay. Another guy, I believe he's the Olympic commissioner or one of them. I'm not sure. His but he's one of the guys that's frequently on the media for talking about the Olympics. And he wrote a book called Inside the Scandals, Politics, and Glory of the Olympic Games. It's called Inside the Olympics. Okay, Inside the Olympics, the front cover is a hand gripping a shaft. It is a hand of a gymnast on a bar, right?
Okay.
But it's just very close up on just that.
Uh-huh.
And his name, he could go by Richard. He could go by Rick. He could go by anything, but he goes by Dick Pound. His last name is Pound. And he goes by, and he puts that right on the cover with his hand. Once you start seeing this stuff, it just is like, it's so obvious. And then, okay.
I've been writing these down as you're going, and it looks like I imagine the cast of a pornographic film you know what I mean? Like,
well,
it's just made up names.
Who do you think is in charge of the porno? All right, one of the majors. Okay. Then you've got things like one they just these sex names come up all the time. And if you pay attention, and also the number 11 happens so often. The number 11 is encoding a spell, by the way, because Aleister Crowley wrote that when you want to get a spell started, you start with a number of 11.
Are you kidding me?
No, 100%.
Okay, so we need to talk about my number 11 dream on this show then.
Yeah, and so when you notice suspiciously the number 11 coming up a lot in these things like, I don't know, 9/11, Apollo 11, it's the start of a spell. Or when two numbers add to 11. And I realize that is high schizophrenia. You're like,
yeah,
just because he was stabbed 47 times, you mean it's fake? It's like, well, 4 and 7 do equal 11, and no one stabbed 47 times. People don't. That really doesn't happen.
Yeah, that would take a long time. I mean, your arm would be tired by then.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we saying here? What is all this? Because people are like, okay, so they're making up the news. Well, yes, they're making up the news, but it's more than that. Because there's guys, the Challenger, none of the astronauts died.
What?
I'm just gonna hang that out there. The Challenger astronauts are still alive, or they may have died of old age by now. I'm not sure, but they are 100% did not die. Their Social Security numbers were still active, and they still go about their daily lives. And most of them are college professors or CEOs, and they use the same name.
What?
I know. I know. Francis Richard Scobie was one of the astronauts. He was the commander of the and there is a Richard Scobie alive today. He's the CEO of a company called Cows and Trees Ltd. Richard Scobie, and they look identical. They got the same weird shaped eye. The thing about him is he had a slightly asymmetrical face. And the older fellow, also going by Richard Scobie, who is the CEO of Cows and Trees, looks identical. He's the same guy, but aged the appropriate amount of time.
Oh, man.
And that's true for all of them. Many of them are college professors. They go by their same name. The Challenger exploded, but there was nobody on it. It was on purpose. And I realize that now we're in high conspiracy territory.
So what was the point of it then?
Hold on, we'll get to that. Okay.
Oh, man. I hate
Everyone
this.
Just hang on for this ride. Okay.
Okay.
Now here's one that really upsets people.
Okay.
But the you know the shooting with all the kids that they said happened? Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sandy Hook shooting. What year was that? Let's look it up real quick. Sandy Hook shooting was in 2012.
Okay. All right.
So in 2013, the Sandy Hook children went. This is no one remembers this, but you can go find the video. The Sandy Hook children went to the Super Bowl and sang during the halftime show. Ostensibly to commemorate, to work through the pain or some other nonsense. Like you would think you just wouldn't want to subject them to, like, the survivors of a shooting. You wouldn't want to go put in the middle of the most heavily watched thing on the globe and
Yeah.
have everybody remember it a year later when they're just starting to get over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they did. And when you watch it, and you so look at the photos of the supposed victims, and then go look at those people singing in the Sandy Hook Elementary School choir, and they are the same people. They're still alive. I mean, it's not even close. They are one for one. Like, oh, that's that girl, that's that boy, that's that girl. You can see them. It was just like in your face. Okay.
Are you being serious here?
100%. 100%. And I know people are like, okay, now there's a lot of people that jumped off the ship here, because when you start talking about, like, there were no weapons of mass destruction, people are like, okay, that makes sense. Or if you can even say, it's even more appropriate today to say this was not true 20 years ago, but you could be like, I think the government had something to do with 9/11.
Right.
So many people distrust the government now that they're like, yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you go, nobody died on the Challenger.
Yeah.
People or they just stayed Sandy Hook and then got all the kids to come out and sing in front of everybody.
Well, it feels like you're desecrating somebody's grave.
I know. This is why it's that's why it's part of the magic spell, because it carries the social shame of not doing it, of going against the dead or whatever. Okay. So there's Waynell Sexton.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep saying that. No one.
Waynell Sexton.
Israel Burns. C. Kenya Lynch. Okay. Dick Pound. So why? so there's this meme that goes around the right wing about the death of America. They're saying that we're in the Kali Yuga. Have you heard this before?
No.
The Kali Yuga. So in Hinduism, there are 4 ages, and I forget the names of all of them, but Kali Yuga.
Mm-hmm.
And they're ages named after the throws in a Hindu dice game. There are 4 throws, and 4 is the most perfect. And if you throw 4, then you're doing great. The worst throw is 1.
Okay.
All right. And in this cosmology, the cycles of the earth and of time and of civilization and even your own personal life go through the 4 stages. So the first stage is a golden age. So civilization starts, everything's great, it's perfect. And then there's the second stage, which is a throw of 3. Things are a little wobbly, but still pretty good. There's the third stage, which is a throw of 2, which is when good and evil are perfectly balanced in society. And then there's the final stage, stage 1, a throw of 1, called Kali Yuga. Yuga means age, basically, so it's the Kali Yuga, where evil is triumphant and everything's destroyed. And then the cycle begins again. And so a lot of people have jumped on that and like, oh, this is our Kali Yuga, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about Kali Yuga. So in Hinduism, and I'm gonna bring all this in. In Hinduism, you've got there's one God in Hinduism that comes on in many forms. A lot of people don't realize that.
Okay.
So they think there's all these gods, and there are, but they're the same thing that comes on in many ways. So when the Golden Age starts, it's the Brahman, the Atman. Mm-hmm. He comes on, and he's the creator. And then you've got Vishnu, the preserver, who's in the stages 2 and 3, and he keeps things stable. And then the last one, God comes on as Shiva, the destroyer, blue skin, necklace of skulls. All these arms, you've seen all the arms on the Hindu statues. Yeah. And the arms are holding clubs and knives and snakes and stabby things, It's very it's time for death now. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing about the Shiva statue and the Kali Yuga is there's always one hand that's doing a little chill out sign. He's got all these arms and they're raw and stabby and Pokey and Snake and Pestilence, right? But then one of the arms is usually held up, and sometimes it's even doing the OK symbol, right?
Like telling you to calm down or be cool.
Like, hey guys, this is all a big act. This is what's actually happening. Because people are like, well, why would they? Because here's the thing: you can go through the conspiracy with the Sandy. Let's say you want to fake the Sandy Hook kids thing. You fake the Sandy Hook massacre to what? To push gun control, right? It didn't work, but you tried. It was a good effort. Then why would they tell you a year later by putting all the kids on the Super Bowl for everyone to see?
Indeed.
If you're awake and looking, it's just like obvious, 100% obvious. Why would the Challenger people use their same names and have their same? So like you could have done a better hoax, is what I'm saying. Or if you really wanted to set up a shooting, just go actually do the shooting. Like if you're that evil, right? Or just actually kill the Challenger people. Why keep them alive and have them? Why leave all these clues that this isn't real inside these articles? Like, his name. He wanted to burn down the Jews. What was his name? Israel Burns. Like that's
right. Yeah.
Why have all the sex jokes inside of all of the propaganda? And that's because if there's a really deep spiritual law in place. Like in the Bible, Satan couldn't just do whatever he wanted to Job.
Right.
He could only do what he had permission to. And the forces of evil are operating within parameters. It's not all like, they can't just do willy-nilly. And one of the parameters is that if you're awake to it, they show you that it's a big game. Right. And so when Shiva's coming on with all his destroying, he's got one hand either up or making the OK sign. It's saying, listen, this is do not panic. This is a controlled demolition. This is not like insanity. This is things being broken down on purpose.
Right.
And that's what's going on. I mean, it's not for nothing that the OK sign became a hate symbol in these times. And that's what also Shiva holds up, because these symbols recur over and over again. It's like, hey, yes, I know, but on this side, shh, Wayne Sexton. It's like, I know this is all looking crazy, but listen, like, look, we're gonna mass vaccinate everybody, and we're gonna kill you, and race wars, and we're gonna China, and then shh, take a pound, Wayne Sexton, just wink. Here's the Sandy Hook kids. Look, wink, wink. Like, it's not real. And people are like, "What do you mean it's not real?" I mean, the America is coming down, but
it's a controlled demolition.
But if it's a controlled demolition, it's not like. What I'm saying is there's order even in the chaos. Like, don't be too freaked out about it. And this is because I was thinking about this, because Jesus has this weird line in the Sermon on the Mount. Well, two weird lines. Well, all the lines are sort of weird, but two that stand out to a lot of people is, one, the meek shall inherit the earth. And then he says, do not resist the evil person, but if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn him the other as well. Do not resist, steal from you, or do not refuse the one that would borrow from you. Give to the one that would take from you. If someone sues you to take your cloak, give to him your tunic as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him too. And it's like, how does that help anything?
Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking about that in relation to these statue things today, because so they're not. This isn't like. Got to think of it more like these are decomposers. Like Soros is a decomposer. He's like bacteria. He's like a vulture, right? And these forces are like decomposing forces. So the America has died. It's already dead, and you're only noticing it now because now the decomposing forces are scavenging the body. right? The Soroses are
Right.
coming in. Like Soros can't do anything to like what these people are is they come along and they're like, squawk, and they poke at you. Are you dead yet? Like, can I start eating? If you just turn around and go, no, go away. They flap off. Like, oh, okay, I'll try back later. Right? These forces, they like if a country is not open to it, like say Japan or Hungary,
Yeah.
there's just nothing that happens. They can't do anything. Only when you're already spiritually dead that these things have any ability whatsoever. And so our country has gone through like we destroyed the family unit, right? And we so people get mad at the gays and stuff, but you got to remember almost everyone you see out there in like a pride parade was sexually abused as a child.
Yeah.
Almost every one of them. Like that's real. Like the rate of the overlap of sexually abused as children to becoming LGBT later in life is like 90%.
Yeah.
It's high. And so then you think back and say, well, how did that happen? Well, a lot of it was divorce became normalized, and then there are a lot of children living in single parent households that are very open to abuse by different boyfriends and girlfriends coming through all the time.
Yep.
It's just living with non-standard living arrangements, right?
Yep.
So everyone accepted debt and all these everything, all America has all of the cardinal sins: gluttony, lust, wrath, pride, all of them, right? And so it's spiritually dead. And then so when they come along and be like, well, I guess it's time to, you all hate yourselves, right? And they're like, yeah, okay, well, now it's time to die.
Mm.
And then like that's what this all is. It's like, hey, because it doesn't work on people that don't hate themselves. Like it's like,
Yeah.
they point to you and go, hey, did you know you're killing the planet by breathing and eating? You're killing the planet. You're bad. And you're like, no, I'm not. Go away. And I'm like,
yeah. And that's all you ever have to say
off.
when somebody comes at you with you're killing the planet or you're a racist and everything you have is from racism. If you just say, no, that's not true, screw off. That's usually all you got to do.
Yeah, they just slink away.
Yeah.
They're not.
Because you're not dead yet. You're not dead yet. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, all they do is they test you all the time. It's like a little, one time I was out hiking in the woods and I was a couple of times, I was really way outside my should have been element.
Mm-hmm.
I would sit down for a while and vultures would circle overhead and I'd be like, I'm not dying yet, guys. I know I look pretty rough at the moment, but you just move on. And that's what it's like. Like they'll like look and like, that guy looks tired. Is he about to die? Yeah, no, he's getting back up. Okay, let's fly out. And that's all it is. That's all. That happened to me in the Grand Canyon too. The Grand Canyon has some ginormous buzzards. But there was a sign at the Grand Canyon when I went, and it was like the first sign you see is "Do not attempt to hike the whole thing in one day." And I was like, well, okay, that's a challenge. So I did, and that was very difficult.
I believe it.
Getting down to because it's a reverse hike. Because normally you get to the top and you're like, I'm tired, but now I get to go down. But then you get to the bottom and you're like, I'm really tired, and now I got to go up. It's awful. But anyway, that's all. Like George Soros, all of these forces are just like, hey, they're dead. Let's go eat them, right? And so when Christ is like, look, turn the other cheek, it's just like the statue stuff. Like people are like, it goads you out there. It's like, hey, do you want to play? Do you want to play the race war game?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you want to go die? You hate yourself. You hate everybody. And so the people that do, they go out there and they do all the, they worship the black people, or they cry about their privilege, or on the opposite side, they think like, oh, I gotta do something to stop this, and then I gotta, and they run out there and then they get shot or they shoot someone, and then it's like, gotcha, see,
Yep.
gotcha, and because what it is in stages of death and decline, the state itself is serving the decomposing process.
Mm.
So to play along with it, like this is why like Jesus is like, don't get involved in these legal matters, because the legal system it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you're going to be drawn out into this stuff, and this is like the meek will inherit the earth because everyone else is going to go play the game and die. Like these,
Mm.
like the Black Lives Matter people, guys, they're gonna die.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing. Like that already happened. Like in Ferguson, if you talk to the people that were there, most of the Black Lives Matter people are already dead.
Yeah.
Like the leaders of that,
Mm-hmm.
they got in a shooting, they got shot, they drug overdose, they did all this because you can't. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword. If you go around and you're just you know burning down everything, you're getting in shootouts and stuff. It's not a good lifestyle for you. You
Yeah.
you end up dead. And like all these people, they just burned down their own cities. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you got to look at it. Like guys, they're burning down everywhere that they would use to like go get groceries, go get medicine,
Yep.
go to work and get a job. Like they burn down where they live because they also hate themselves.
Yeah.
These black people, the black people that buy into the narrative, it's the same thing. It's the decomposer going around like, hey, are you dead? Are you dead? And the like the spiritual forces, you know, are going around, but hey, you dead? You want to die? And they come out and say, yeah, I hate myself. All these white people are just they're controlling everything I do, and they've got me down, and I can't do anything. And you know, their level of self-loathing is so high that they're willing to ascribe all of their problems to like they've given up all agency. They've said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not responsible for anything. It's all, and the black people that don't buy into it, they're going to be fine. They're going to swim through this, no problem. But all the people that participate in this is like the purge. You know, they're gonna, and a lot of people are going to get or fall into it.
Yeah.
Like probably a whole lot of people, and they're going to whip up people into riots and wars against each other and all this stuff. But it's just, you know, and all of this is going on. There's the one hand of the destroyer of Shiva that's going, hey, here's the okay sign. If
Mm-hmm.
you're not dead, you don't worry too much. Stuff may get a little hectic, but like you're not susceptible to the and there's always this wink and a nod. It's like, hey, you know, here's George Floyd and do and hey, look, his second grade teacher's name Wayne Sexton, and we did a closed casket. No one saw him
Yeah.
dead. And why weren't and this happened in Minneapolis. And look at the video. No one's wearing a mask. Why was
Mm-hmm.
no one wearing a mask? Go to Minneapolis even now. Everyone's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
This was at the height of the coronavirus panic
Mm.
supposedly.
Yep.
Okay. Only one of the EMTs who wear masks sometimes anyway and gets out of there was wearing a mask. Almost like it was filmed beforehand
Mm-hmm.
and just waited to be thrown out until the proper moment. You know, just
She noticed that
throwing it out there.
the George Floyd on the ground was bald, and the standing up George Floyd had some hair. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, in his in the one in the videos.
Yeah, so there's the video
Yeah.
on the ground that's so awful, and then everybody's
Yeah.
watching. But there's a few other videos of the arrest floating around from like different cameras.
Yeah. And he's got hair.
He's got hair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not real, guys. I mean, I know when you say like, look, here's proper level of conspiracy. There's one level of conspiracy like, who did 9/11? And then you got to get to this level where you're like, did 9/11 even happen? And look,
Whole
9/11
new
did
level.
happen. The building did come down,
Yeah.
but you have to ask yourself like is George Floyd even dead?
Yeah.
Like again, the names, guys. The officer's name was Chauvin. It's 3 letters away from chauvinist.
Mm-hmm.
If you just add IST on the end, he was murdered by officer chauvinist.
Yeah.
It's not. That was too on the nose, right? So they had to take that off. But if you're paying attention, it's like, oh, he has hair. Oh, now he doesn't have hair. Oh, he couldn't breathe, but no one saw. He died in the ambulance, and the closed casket everywhere, and no one's wearing a mask, and it's just this. It's a giant spell.
Yeah.
It's just a spell. What day did he die on? Even
I don't know.
George Floyd death. That was May 25. Yeah. So it's just none of it. And then Like because it's easily seen to be a psyop because there's no reason this would spiral out of control
Mm-hmm.
unless it was funded by the decomposers.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Serious stuff like this happens all the time, and nobody
right?
cares.
Nobody cares.
People
Nobody cares
die.
about Black
People
lives.
on large amounts of drugs die in police custody a lot, and nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody. These people do not care about Black lives. If they did, look, they go on about slavery, but there's slavery happening
Yeah.
right now in Libya that you could go stop if you really care. There, you can go to Libya this moment and buy a black man for $200.
Yeah.
You can go to a market and purchase a black slave for $200. And if you really cared about slavery, you could go stop that right now. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. None of it. It's all an act. It's all like, hey, do you hate yourself? You want to go die? And people are like, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
You know, when you buy into this is why, like, it's like the people that participate in these humiliation rituals, they're just getting them ready for death. Go look at that. Go look at the trains. Go look at photos from the trains of the concentration camps in Germany and in Russia.
Okay.
Go. The people on there, they're dressed like they're going out. They have their suits on. They're wearing their hats. The ladies have their bonnets and their bags. They got on there voluntarily for the most part. Like, it wasn't like they dragged them out of their house in the middle of the night, put them at gunpoint, and marched them to the trains. It was, hey, it was the same tactic. It was like, if you want to participate, I mean, it's not this blatant, it's not this like open, like, hey, do you want to participate in death?
Right.
But it's like, do you hate yourself? Do you think that you sort of deserve this on some level? Why don't you come out here and we'll do a thing? And then people go out there and then they just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and it's like, it's, and this is a weird thing where I get in about Satan. Because it's like, this is in some way, this is like Satan's role. And it's like, Satan is evil, but also it's like, is the bacteria that decomposes a body in the woods evil?
Mm.
It's sort of like a cleanup crew. Like, one of the rules is like when things are dead, here comes this stuff to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't there, the woods would be filled with corpses. But as it is, it could be even full with Bigfoot corpses, but it just goes away.
I guess when you have a bunch of people who hate themselves and hate God, the decomposer is going to naturally arise.
Yeah.
To take care of, to clean that up.
Well, I mean, and think about this is why you gotta say what's true, because you will end up hating yourself because you can't get away from it. Like think about it. We live in a world where, like, most of these people, I guarantee you, most of these people at Black Lives Matter protests,
Mm-hmm.
especially the white ones, have been their whole lives defending killing infants.
Oh yeah.
So they probably even done it themselves.
Yeah.
And they through abortion and stuff, and they've been telling themselves, "Oh, this is okay," but your soul knows it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Your soul knows this is not okay, right? And you don't get away from that. And so then they treat human life as trash, and they begin to feel it themselves.
Yeah.
And so then you get there, and and it would even on some sense be better if you were like, yeah, this is murder and I do it. Because at least you're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're being honest about it, then you have a chance at like being like, yeah, I'm participating in evil.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but if you say, it's what Jesus said, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Because that's like a point where you're like, it's almost beyond help.
Yeah.
But if you're like the guy that does evil and just says, yeah, this is evil, I shouldn't do this, but I don't really see any other thing to do at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, that you can work with that.
Right.
There's still something there, but so that's why the repentance and confession was always such a big thing. But anyway, Bigfoot doesn't have these problems.
It's been like, especially this week. It's, me and probably a lot of other people who are not dead yet, really burdened at what they're seeing, It's really been heavy on me.
Yeah.
And it does help
Right.
to realize that these are a bunch of people that hate themselves, and they're doing this, and I need not participate.
You need not participate. Listen, just remember, like whenever the destroyer is coming on with all his many arms and clubs, just remember him going, Wayne O. Sexton. like this is a joke. It's a joke, and it's
Right.
only for people there.
And if somebody comes at you with a lie, refute
Yeah.
them. Refute them.
Right.
Don't
Yeah.
play self-loathing games with self-loathing people. If somebody comes at you and says you're an oppressor, everything you have is on the death of black bodies or whatever, tell them to take a hike.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to imbibe the self-hating poison that they are selling. You don't have to participate in that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't even realize where the black body stuff comes from. That's all like Louis Farrakhan's mother wheel in the sky UFO cult of Nation of Islam theology.
That's
It's
weird.
it's weird. I'll talk about that another time. But the Nation of Islam is basically Mormonism for black people, and then it's a UFO cult.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you have some Bigfoot howls to lead us into the next bit?
I do. Let's listen to some
Let's listen to Bigfoot.
noises of nature. You want me to just run them all in sequence?
Let's these are the sounds that Bigfoot makes, and we're gonna hear them.
Okay, we're gonna start with the whoop.
Okay. Yeah, that's the wood knocking. Yeah, the wood knocking.
Yeah. I mean, those are definitely like monkey sounds.
That's some sort of monkey.
Do you know where that was recorded?
They claim those were recorded in Mississippi and Ohio.
Whoa. Okay, next clip. That was great.
That's my favorite. That's called samurai chatter.
Uh-huh.
So Bigfoot's Bigfoot's from a distance they'll whoop. They whoop whoop, like a monkey would do.
Right.
This is the thing about Bigfoot is he displays both simian characteristics and also human characteristics. And he'll do the whoop whoop, but then when you get up close, and if you start talking to him, in rare cases, but this is weird because people will record this very similar sound in different places around America.
Oh, weird.
Like that's strange. You're out in the woods and you hear someone going, "Oh, all
right."
And it sounds like a Japanese movie, Bad Samurai dub, right? It's called Samurai Chat. There's tons of these, and it's like, I don't know. It's sort of like the footprints thing. It's like, is everyone faking the footprints? Because the footprints come out very similar, repeatedly, over and over again.
All right, let me play this last clip here.
Right there, I just seen movement right through there.
So he's kind of calling and responding with the Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's the Bigfoot call. Like a turkey call is like waddle, 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 or gobble, 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 and a Bigfoot call is you get out in the woods.
Okay.
That's Ron Moorhead in that video. That's the Sierra Samurai thing, and Ron Moorhead is a long time Bigfoot guy, and I think he would fit on in the show very well. We should maybe get him on. He's been on the documentary circuit forever. He's a classic paranormal businessman, doing it forever. He was on documentary circuits, the occasional Travel Channel bit, where they get someone to talk about seeing Bigfoot on their way to the Space Needle or whatever. He's been on the BBC. Handsome fella too. He looks good. He sort of looks like an Alaskan bush pilot. Got that sort of vibe going on.
Okay.
He's got this great website It looks like it was made in 2007 and hasn't been updated since. And you can on his website you can buy great things like Bigfoot recordings on CD Volume 1 for $15.98. Bigfoot recordings on CD Volume 2 for $15.98, or the package you can get both of them for only $20.98.
Ooh, that's a
So
deal,
you
man.
save $10. But yeah, Ron he made a lot of those samurai recordings in the early days, and he. But I like about him, he would fit on the show because he doesn't shy away from the weirdness of Bigfoot. You know, there's like this. There's two camps, and the one camp is by far the biggest, and I think it's the normie camp. Like when people say Bigfoot, you think, oh, okay, there's some undiscovered ape in the Americas,
Sure,
walking around like a North American orangutan.
Yeah.
Right, and it's in very small numbers. I've actually met people that thought it was only one person, like one individual.
Okay.
And I was like, how would that work? Like
Right.
these weren't squatchers. These were like normies talking
Okay.
about Bigfoot. And then I'd talk about Bigfoot, and they'd be like, "You mean there's more than one?" I'm like, "What? You think there's just one Bigfoot?"
Well,
Like,
if you really carry that out, that's like your kind of immortal forest spirit, sort of. You know what I mean?
Right. No. Here's the line from the Sasquatch community is that Bigfoot is a small. Sasquatch is a small a small but big enough to be a breeding size population of undiscovered apes in the American woods.
Okay.
Right there, and a lot of them think that they are perhaps closer to humans than chimpanzees.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that they can do word-like vocalizations like samurais,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're higher intelligent than other apes.
Okay.
Right? They have primitive language, primitive communication skills.
Okay.
Right. That's the standard, what I would call the flesh and blood model.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But Ron Moorhead does not shy away from the weirder stuff of Bigfoot, because it also on his website, where you can buy Bigfoot recordings on CD, he has books like The Quantum Bigfoot. The Quantum Bigfoot, where he has a picture of a Sasquatch like inside of an atom. And this was a great quote from it. The quantum world of physics also provides an explanation for those folks who believe in God, how divine energy infiltrates the world we live in. If we allow our minds to capture this thought, we all win. Many religious people have never before considered quantum physics as the way God works throughout the universe, on the planet, in you and in me. The quantum law, or in Bigfoot, the quantum laws, which were brought to light in the 19th century, are the same taught by Jesus over 2,000 years ago.
What?
The very oneness of the connection he shows us in John 17. As humans, we all have it. So why are we not walking on water? That's a quote from Quantum Bigfoot. And you know, the thing about it is, that doesn't sound like something totally different from what I would say.
You're right.
But I don't know. There's some like indescribable line where you step over it and now you're just talking nonsense.
Yeah, it's like,
I talk
you're at
nonsense,
a
but my
prepper
nonsense is sort of
conference.
coherent.
You're right.
And that nonsense is just like it's sort of, he's in the right vein, but it's not well formed.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd like to have him on the show. He's been out and about in the woods looking for Sasquatch for like 40 years. But yeah, so there's the first one you heard was the Ohio Howl, which was in Columbiana County, Ohio, and that was the whoop 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 sound.
Right.
And then there was the second whoops. The second whoops was also recorded by, one of those was recorded by Ron also. The whoops and knocks, where he hits because one of the things the Sasquatchers say is that Bigfoots communicate by whooping, and they will like do I wouldn't call it Morse code, but something in that vein of wood knocking. So you take a stick, you hit it against a tree, and these patterns mean different things, like tap, 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 or tap, tap, you know, and that's different signals between Bigfoots.
Oh.
Is this idea. Okay. Because when you get out in the woods, the Bigfoots will tap at you, and they will, you know, they'll throw rocks at campers, and they'll make these whooping sounds and these gutterations like "Arr." Um, I don't know. Do you know anyone that's encountered a Bigfoot?
I thought I had encountered a Bigfoot for about 5 minutes, and then discovered it was an angry beaver. No, this was actually pretty freaky, and I would and it kind of made me doubt a lot of so-called Bigfoot sightings because of how convincing it was, and yet not true. So I was in remote northern Canada fishing. Okay, This was a fly-in place. There's no roads to get out here, so quite remote. And I was in a boat with my dad, and we were in this little cove on this lake up in the middle of nowhere. And I've got my back to the bank, and behind us there is a tremendous splash, a tremendous, big, violent, like somebody threw a small car into the lake. It's what it sounded like. Okay,
right.
And me and Dad just totally freaked out. What the heck was that? And then, but it didn't happen again. We're just sitting there looking around for a minute. Nothing else happens. I'm looking for Bigfoot. Like I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna get attacked by Bigfoot. He's gonna get me. and nothing else happens, right? And we eventually calm down. Like, well, I mean, we're in the middle. Might as well just keep fishing. So we keep fishing, and then I see this weird looking undulating brown thing moving through the water. Okay? Large thing. Not like human size, but
big.
Probably a 50, 60 pound thing. Moving very quickly through the water, looking like Cousin It swimming around because the hair is just waving, and then, okay, this place is weird. I'm kind of, I'm starting like there's things swimming around in the water I can't identify, definitely not fish. There's giant splashes. And then I realize it's a beaver because I see his beaver buddy sitting on the bank, like munching on something. Like, oh, there's beavers. And then I remember sometimes beavers slap the water to scare you. And I always imagined that as like a little, haha, go away. No, it's a tremendous, violent, like I don't know how a 60-pound animal can produce a 500-pound splash, or whatever it is. But I mean, it was a big beaver, but still, it was amazing. And so then I thought, man, how many people have had this same experience without sticking around to see that it was a beaver and go their whole lives convincing that Bigfoot was trying to scare him off of his island?
Well, I mean, maybe a lot, but also I'd point out you didn't actually see the beaver make the sound.
Well, I guess that's true.
It could have been a Bigfoot, and then you just saw a beaver.
I cannot refute that.
Is that not so?
It could be so. It could be so. Are there Bigfeets in Canada? Hello?
You there?
Are there Bigfeets in Canada?
Are there Bigfeets in Canada? There's lots of Bigfeets in Canada.
Okay.
This is another point of contention is what do you call the plural?
I've
always said I prefer to say big feet.
Okay.
But the Sasquatchers say it's Bigfoot and Bigfoot, like moose and moose. Like the plural of the singular. And I said that's always dumb. It was dumb when they did it for moose. Yeah. It's dumb when you do it for Bigfoot. You just call them big feet. And a herd of big feet should be called a stomp. But they don't. No one has taken up my terminology yet. Yeah.
I say big feet just to be silly.
Or a trample.
A trample, that's good. Yeah, a trample of big feet.
Yeah.
We're plagued with bandwidth issues today.
I know.
We're just gonna fight through it.
It's the decomposers. Yeah. But Bigfoot does go back in America for a long time. Teddy Roosevelt wrote about Bigfoot.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. In 1892, he wrote a book about to make some money, and in it he recounts the story of a trapper he knew called Bowman and his brush with a Sasquatch. So Roosevelt said that Bowman was a hunter, a trapper, and a frontiersman who'd seen about all there was to see while living the life in the wild. In his younger days, Bowman and his partner had set out on a trapping expedition. After finding an area they thought they'd have some luck, they set up camp and went off exploring for a while. When they returned, they found their campsite trashed. They assumed the culprit a bear, but upon inspection they discovered by its tracks that this bear seemed to have been walking on 2 feet. That night the men were awakened by noises and what appeared to be a massive creature lurking in the darkness. They fired at it with their guns, but the creature ran off. The next day they went out to check their traps and once again returned to the smashed up campsite. During the night the creature menaced them once more, and while it wouldn't come near the fire, it made a huge racket in the surrounding woods. Deciding enough was enough, the men cut their trip short. Bauman went off alone to collect some of the remaining traps and returned several hours later to a horrible scene. His partner had been killed and apparently flung around the campsite by a powerful animal. His neck had been broken and bitten, but apparently he wasn't taking his prey as his body was still intact. Bauman left the traps and supplies behind immediately and fled the mountain as fast as he could. That's in Roosevelt's book, President Teddy Roosevelt, and he describes it as a troll, or a goblin. He says it was a goblin, but it's a Bigfoot. I mean, the term Bigfoot just hadn't been invented yet. But that was it's a pretty classic Bigfoot encounter, except with violence. Mm-hmm. Most Bigfoot encounters are not violent. Another one from the times past is the Wendigo spirit of the sort of the Indians up around Saskatchewan, and this was in a report. There was a publication in the 1600s called the Jesuit Relations, in which Jesuits would publish things to each other around the globe.
Okay.
And this was North Canadian Jesuits about their encounter with the Wendigo psychosis, the Wendigo spirit. Quote, "What caused us greater concern was the intelligence that met us upon entering the lake, namely that the men deputed by our conductor for the purple nations, the Indians, to the North Sea, and assigning them a rendezvous where they were to await our coming, had met their death the previous winter in a very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report given to us, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They are afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease, which affects their imaginations and causes them a more than canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves and devour them ferociously, without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey. And the more greedily the more they eat. This ailment attacked our deputies, and, as death is the sole remedy among the simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness."
Yoy. So how does this connect to Bigfoot, though?
Well, that's the Wendigo, and the Wendigo was a Bigfoot-like creature that if you encountered him, he would drive people. He would possess you with his spirit.
Yikes!
He'd make you. That's why I say that the Bigfoot creatures around North America, they had different. The natives described them different powers, but always some sort of magical power. Mm-hmm. And so the Jesuits sent off some people, and then they developed a cannibal madness, and the Jesuits had to kill them, which they called the Wendigo possession. The Wendigo psychosis was an ailment some time ago. That was the medical establishment would diagnose you with. Oh, you have Wendigo psychosis. We've got to kill you. And that was the only treatment. So all that's to say that this Bigfoot stuff goes back a long time, because that was in 1661. Now it goes back a long time, but it's always got this weird element to it. Like there's your normal stuff, like almost everywhere that people encounter a Bigfoot, the Bigfoot smells awful. He smells like a skunk, or they say like dead flesh or like rotting food. Mm-hmm. And it's a very powerful stench, right? And that happens. This is one of the weird things is that happens even among people. Like if you read, I know we all daily go on the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization website, the BFRO, and look at field reports. But the field reports always, this is at least like some person out there, and they're They're like, well, I saw the Bigfoots and it smelled awful. And they all say that, even though there's no way these people should know to say that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they do that all the time. And it's like, it smells so bad, in fact, that in Florida, Bigfoot is called the skunk ape.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was known before they really connected Bigfoot together. Like, oh, we got a skunk ape, and then someone was like, oh, it's probably the same thing, right? And they're like, I guess so. But so he smells terrible. Other things Bigfoot does is he does. I mean, he does a lot of regular primate things, like he throws rocks. I don't think he throws poo, but he throws rocks. He makes those howls. He does all this stuff. And the biggest, have you seen the best evidence for I would say that paranormal stuff in general has Bigfoot envy, because we have the most physical evidence for Bigfoot of anything.
Right.
But it's all secondary evidence. Like, we don't have a body.
Mm-hmm.
A body. But we have footprints. We have audio recordings. We have hair sometimes. We have like various structures in the woods that look like something put them up there to sit under in the rain. So I think everything has sort of Bigfoot envy. But the problem is that all of these they're sort of they're sort of weird washed. They're weird washed. Like the BFRO, well, they're like the MUFON of Bigfoot.
Okay.
MUFON, the Mutual UFO Reporting Network,
Mm-hmm.
where you get on, then you report your UFO sighting. They do the same thing. They weird wash it, and which is like whitewashing. It's like when you have Tom Cruise as the Last Samurai. He's a white guy, the Last Samurai.
Right.
It's like that, but with weirdness. So the BFRO will not generally include the weird bits, or they're sort of try to leave them out, because they're dead set on Bigfoot being just an undiscovered gorilla.
Okay.
Right? Just like the extraterrestrial hypothesis folks are dead set on UFOs being aliens from other planets. And things that don't really fit into that, they sort of push aside. Like, here's some normal Bigfoot research. BFRO, I would call them weird wash, because I don't know that there's more to the story, but I'm just assuming there is.
Okay.
Because of that, because there almost always is. But so this is BFRO. I just wrote down a few, and I should preface this by saying there's three classes on the BFRO of Bigfoot sightings: Class A, Class B, and Class C. Class C is like a secondhand report.
Okay.
Or third hand. Lowest. Class B is like you hear there's a lot of squatchy stuff going around, but you don't actually see a Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like your sighting would have been a Class B.
Okay.
If you hadn't seen the beaver and you were like, oh, I heard a beaver, right? And Class A is where you get like a sighting of a Bigfoot. Okay. So this is I pulled three at random. And this is sort of your standard Bigfoot report that gets passed around. All right. This was from Alabama, November 2012. This is a Class A report. It was in Etowah County.
Mm-hmm.
It says, this is the report. Well, here goes. It was late evening, and I stopped out of our driveway and saw something in a shadow. It turned and stepped across the lit area and into the woods. 1.5 steps, about 8-10 feet. Since then, a lot more incidents, about like what I've described, and there's always a rotten dead-like odor. We have 12 about acres in the area. We see this is where we put table scraps. Also, there is an area where trees 6 inches in diameter are just pushed to the ground in the middle that's scratched up. Then that's the end. It's very yokel sort of.
Yeah.
Bigfoot is the people's paranormal thing.
Sure.
Bigfoot is like where because I would say on the scale of literacy, UFO things are the most literate weirdos. because they, for no other reason, they write the most books,
Mm-hmm.
and they come up with all these really weird theories and very highfalutin about where the UFO. And below that is probably your government conspiracies, where they talk about how 9/11 was an inside job.
Yep.
They're pretty literate. And then down here's ghosts, right? Because most commoners believe in ghosts. And then way down here is Bigfoots, where they say things like, we have 12 bout acres.
Right.
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 But on some level, that sort of makes it almost more plausible, because these people are reporting the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even though it's almost assuredly that they're not reading each other's comments.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So here's two things about that one. One is this person also noted the rot and dead-like odor, but two, he's leaving out table scraps.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's called in the Bigfoot community. He's not doing this on purpose, but this is what's called in the Bigfoot community as gifting. So if you leave out foods for Bigfoots of various kinds, Bigfoots will become habituated to it.
Okay.
Right? This is what they say, and then if you remove the food, if you stop doing it, Bigfoot will often get angry and like bang on your house, or maybe kill one of your livestock, or something like that. To which Timothy Renner, he and a fellow named Josh Cutchin wrote a recent book that got me on this Bigfoot thing recently. He pointed out, he said, that doesn't make any sense. A Bigfoot is a giant creature. Giant. If you're like leaving out a Snickers bar every week, he's not dependent on the Snickers bar. That's like a fraction of his calories.
Right.
That a Bigfoot would have to eat all the time, like a silverback gorilla. It's a massive creature.
Okay.
He's not.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of Snickers bars growing on trees out there. He wants the sugar hit.
That could be. But this guy's leaving out table scraps. But like if you take the thing, so if you're, but here's the thing, it's exactly the same thing people used to do with the fairies and the elves in Europe.
Okay.
You would leave out beer or a thing of milk outside to appease the fairies so they wouldn't come and attack you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. And if you ever stopped, then they get angry. Right? All right, so let's read another one. Lewis County, Kentucky, April 2008, Class A. Hello, I live in Lewis County, Kentucky. And for the last 3 or 4 months, me and my kids have seen something big, and it's not a bear, and it has a smell that is strong, and the dogs are scared of it. We have horses, and when it is close, they go nuts. I have seen it, but not up close. I have lost some livestock, and I do not know what it is, but it will get me up late at night. Can you let me know what to keep it away? Thanks.
It's like he's writing into a gardening blog and saying, "Hey, I got squash. I need something for my squash beetles. I've lost 5 or 6 squash plants to them. It's really a nuisance."
That's why I love these people. They're like, "Can you give me a Bigfoot remedy?" Yeah,
that's awesome.
And
man.
People will. They'll be like, "Well, you could try like hanging up bells or like an iron horseshoe," and he doesn't like that. All right. This is it was one from New Mexico, March 7, 2011. I can't do a New Mexican voice. I was traveling home from work in Gallup to Blue Water. The time was about 8 p.m. As I was traveling on Highway 612, right when I was exiting the sharp curves, I noticed a figure moving by the road on the right side. I thought, that's a very tall person. But I looked and I noticed that it wasn't human. As I got closer, it started to cross the road and almost hit my truck. It stopped, and I did not want to stop because the road was ice-packed, and I did not want to get stuck or run off the road. I seen the creature a few feet through my truck's passenger front window. The creature's face looked ape and human. It was probably 7 feet tall because when it got real close to the vehicle, I couldn't see his face. He stood way over the truck. I was overwhelmed with fear and just kept going.
Ooh.
So
that one kind of creeped me out.
They all say the same thing. His face is it's like almost a human's, but it's still very ape-like. Okay. All right. The January 2020. This is a very recent one in Skamina County, Washington State. I observed driving down Willard Road around 5 p.m. as I came around the last right corner. Looking toward it, the straightaway to the junction with the Cook Underwood Road, I saw a black object in the road. I thought it was a bear, and the largest bear I had ever seen. It took up the whole left lane of the road. It was huge. It looked like the butt was raised up. I figured it was a 600-pound bear in my mind. Then I saw this commotion going on like something moving up and down, all black. A bear will run or lumber across the road. At the time, I thought, I've never seen a bear do this. I thought this could be several deer or elk walking down the road. I was confused about all the motion going on, and then as it approached the creature, and the creature then approached the edge of the bank, it popped up, and I yelled, "It's a man! What's a man doing out here in the woods this time of night?" It stepped out onto the bank and walked into the woods as my mind was trying to figure out what I saw. I saw the whole body and the head and the right leg step onto the bank, left arm back. No hat, no coat, no clothes. There was no snout or ears like a bear. Yes, it had a conical head. Tall arms, arms longer, legs bulky. My headlights lit it up. By the time I passed it, it disappeared into the woods. And by the time I reached Cook Underwood Road, about 600 feet, I knew what I saw, but I was still trying to process it. I went back on Sunday to see if I could see any prints, but it had rained hard all night and I saw no prints. I still see the creature in my mind.
Woo.
So that's the thing about it, is there's hundreds of these, and they all have the same hallmarks. It's like it could almost be a bear, but then I get close to it, I'm like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
And it's giant, and I see its face. It makes similar sounds, and it always smells dead. Right, and these people are not reading Bigfoot books.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be mean, but you can just tell by the way they type or they write their reports out that it's not like they have high levels of literacy.
right.
You know, in many cases. And I picked out some of the good ones. There's a lot of them that are like, but nonetheless, these people are seeing something that's freaking them out.
So how do they end up making a report on this Bigfoot website?
You just go there and you say, here's my report citing, and you fill it out. And then if you have a good report, this organization will they'll either do a phone contact, or if you live nearby, they'll send someone to your house to do follow-ups.
Oh, well, that's cool.
And they have the follow-ups on there. The follow-ups are almost never as interesting. They're always like, they ask you like, what time of day, what was your visualization, can you get a size comparison? Like they hold up a stick and they say, where would he be on this stick? Show me how tall he was, that sort of thing. They don't ever ask the good questions. But what I have found, and what Joshua Cutchin, who I love, he writes great paranormal books, and a guy named Tim Brenner, they recently co-authored a book called Where the Footprints End. It's the definitive weird guide to Bigfoot is. Now, I should say volume 1, even though it's 500 pages. They said Bigfoot. They said Where the Footprints End, Bigfoot Chronicles volume 1. And it's like, you got a volume 2. And I'm sure it's going to be great, but it's a lot of reading.
Right.
But they focused on the weirdness. Because as Timothy points out, he said, when you get into this stuff, it's just weird upon weird. Like the Bigfoot thing.
Give me what's a typical weird thing that would be left out of the normie naturalist Bigfoot?
One of the things that would be left out of normally naturalist Bigfoot is the will-o'-the-wisp lights.
Oh, okay.
Almost always, people that have now I should point out there's a difference between just seeing a Bigfoot once and people that like have a Bigfoot coming around their property. Because if you see it once, but Bigfoots are frequently associated with, like I saw, they're like the people like I saw some lights in the woods, and I sort of walked toward them, and then this Bigfoot popped out at me, right? It'd be these will-o'-the-wisp lights, like these little, in America they call them spook lights. Mm-hmm. Which is just little orbs of light floating around in the woods. And you go towards them, and it's like and then a Bigfoot pops out at you, or they'll see orbs of light in the sky. Like the UFO Bigfoot connection is not small. They will do that, and they will people that encounter a Bigfoot and have a strong Bigfoot encounter will often report later having some sort of what would you call it? Telekinetic or psychic powers.
Ooh.
Like there's a great one from the 70s in this book by them. This fella who he encountered a big, so that they were out there on his property. I think this was in the 70s, and they heard some noises, and this fella, it was it in Kentucky or Virginia? I think maybe Virginia. And they were him and some neighbor kids. This guy, he was, let's say, early 20s, and there were two neighbor kids in their teens. And they heard some noises out in the woods, and so they got in their truck to go investigate. And they get out there, and along a fence line at dusk, they see two figures, a big one and a small one, what the squatters call Littlefoot, or juvenile Bigfoot. And they're walking sort of hand in hand along the fence line. And one of the teenagers instantly said, shoot it. Like he's just instantly freaked out by this giant thing, walking towards him. Yeah. And the guy with the gun, the older guy, he's hesitant to do this, right? And so he doesn't, because he's like, I'm not sure what this is. Could be a big guy. So he has some tracer rounds, right? He puts one of those in his rifle, and he just sort of shoots it up over the Bigfoot's head. This is sort of a test. Mm-hmm. He said the Bigfoot reached out and as if trying to catch it when it went by.
Ooh,
and
weird.
Then it turned at us and it started walking towards us. And he said, then I got really freaked out. I was terrified. Then I loaded my real round and I fired. Boom, boom, boom. And he said it sounded like I was shooting into a puddle of water. It's like plop, plop, plop. And nothing, it didn't make any response. It just kept walking towards us. So we hopped in our car and drove away as fast as we could. So it's this creature, when you shoot it, it sounds like you're shooting into water, and it makes no response. And the Bigfoots are almost always immune to bullets, which is something that tells you this is not a normal creature, right? The Bigfoot, if there was a Bigfoot, if there was an undiscovered ape, it does seem a little weird that no one's found a body yet.
I was going to ask.
I grant you, here's what the flesh and blood people say. The flesh and blood people say, well, go out in the woods and try to find the body of a wolverine or a bear, which is true because, as I said, the decomposers are very good.
I've found animal skeletons in the woods lots of times, though.
I know. Yeah. That's the thing. If you spend enough time in the woods, you do find animal skeletons.
That's something you say to a city dweller to give them the brush off, but it doesn't really hold up.
Right. So that doesn't. There's if and like maybe the Pacific Northwest, maybe northern Canada, like Nunavut province, where there's almost nobody up there. You'd be like, but like these are reports from like, what did I say? I said Alabama,
Kentucky,
from Kentucky, from Mexico. These aren't places that are like have that level of untouched wilderness where a breeding population could be, and you say, well, like if there's a lot of sightings in Philadelphia, say, and it's like, well, there's Philadelphia. It's not really. There's people in enough places where like they wouldn't go unnoticed,
right?
And they'll say, well, they don't live there permanently. They're just migrating through. And you say, yeah, but people will see them all times a year. So what's their migration pattern here? Right. Like if they just came through, and also most apes don't migrate. That's pretty weird.
So I feel you leaning towards a forest spirit sort of a, like, where are you going with all that? What's your take? I want to know your take on this.
Bigfoot is something.
Okay.
that has repeatable characteristics that yokels see and describe the same thing over and over again, even though it's almost certain they're not reading each other. And which displays supernormal abilities. I'm not sure what to make of that, but here I'll read you here's some reports out of their Tim and Joshua Cutchin's book. Um, so he focuses in a lot on this this one area of I believe it's Philadelphia, because that's sort of where he lives. And he said, I just collected a bunch from this one spot, and I'm just he's just going through. He starts like back in 1886, the Mount Nebo Bigfoot. So there was a church in the same area, and is in outside Delta, Pennsylvania, on between Mount Nebo Church and Cooper Road, right where Cooper Road is now. But Mount Nebo Church, outside Delta, Pennsylvania, is still there, I believe, and it was in 1886. Okay, so it's dark, maybe a few, and there was houses. You got to imagine at this time they're like houses illuminated by like candles, maybe.
Yeah.
That's the street light. So Nehemiah Cooper, so the road is named after him now. Nehemiah Cooper and his wife Mary were walking home from evening services at church with some friends, and it would have been quite lonely and dark on this road. It's about a mile, except like I say, maybe some lantern lights. Okay, so on the way, they saw something on the ground about the size of a bucket. But as they looked at it, the bucket stood up, and seemed to be revealing itself to be, quote, a strange monster, quote, 12 to 15 foot tall, and 6 to 7 foot across at the shoulders, which is an incredible size thing. Most Bigfoot reports are like 7, maybe 9, but 12 to 15 is crazy.
Well, how big of a bucket are we talking? That seems like it. There's some spatial issues with this. Bigfoots
are frequently shapeshifters.
Shapeshifting. Okay.
So it was near Halloween. So the Cooper and his friends assumed it was some sort of prank by the neighborhood kids trying to scare them. So they picked up rocks and tried to pelt it. But then the creature began to advance on them, and they ran home. And just assumed they'd been visited by the devil. Right. So that was there. Now, same area, like right down the road, the McConkey Mansion. There was this mansion by this Irish people. And it was always haunted by will-o'-the-wisp. People would walk by up and down, and they'd see these lights floating around, right in the same area. Mm-hmm. That was known for like 100 years through that spot. Right down the road at the Susquehanna River, all right, this was in this 1974. So the first one was the earliest Bigfoot account in the area he could find, right? This was in these, and then he gets into some more modern ones, because as you get past the 70s, Bigfoot is more popular and people start calling him by that name.
Okay.
All right, so it's easier to find stuff. And so they were just building a nuclear power plant there in Pennsylvania called Peach Bottom Atomic Power Station, which is still there. You can look at this area on Google Maps if you want. There was a family off Adam Road there, ATOM, Adam Road, in the summer of 74. And they lived in a camper while their house was being finished because the mom and dad had both gotten jobs at the power plant. Yeah, they had 3 kids, a girl age 3, a boy age 7, and a boy age 9. They were playing in the woods when they heard a twig snap, much like your big splash. Mm-hmm. Looking up, they noticed a hand with extraordinarily long fingers grasping a tree. It might have been human, but it was covered in matted, muddy hair, and the children were terrified. The 2 boys turned to run, and the 7-year-old called for the older 9-year-old boy to retrieve their sister. Courageously, the boy turned, gathered up his younger sister, and they all sprinted for the camper. The family, who'd heard about Bigfoot sightings in the area, immediately left and never spent another night in the camper. They went to a hotel for a while. A few weeks later, the father went to retrieve the camper but found it missing. After some searching, he found the camper floating in the Susquehanna River down the hill.
Ooh.
Right. Right beside the Mount Nebo Church in 1975, same church, another family claimed Bigfoot was coming on their property regularly. At night, they'd hear howling screams from far off, which would morph into a low growl as the creature approached the house. Sometimes it was loud enough to wake the family from sleep. The dogs would bark and howl whenever it approached. It would occasionally pick up and move the family's garbage cans. And at least once they heard it come up on the back porch. In the family's own words, it was, quote, haunting them. Same county, 1978. There was a UFO flap, including an especially strange one of a craft landing in a field. And with these UFO, the same, concurrently were several Bigfoot sightings. In one farm, the man of the house was that his horses and dogs were going wild, and his wife said, "There's something here." Right? He runs outside to see. He doesn't see anything, but he finds 3-toed footprints crisscrossing the land. Each track was 16 inches long and 6 foot and 6 inches wide. And here's the thing about him: he found these over 2 miles of his property. The strides were about 5 feet apart and did not vary in width from one another, or spacing over the whole 2 miles, even when going up hills. And they were also completely in line, not offset like human tracks. So a human walks, and left foot's a little to the left of the right foot, right? And when you go up hills or down hills, your spacing differs. But Bigfoot tracks are often, very often, show no concern for the terrain. They just shoom, shoom, same. It's always equidistant, just boom, 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 boom. And that happens all the time too. And many people report that Bigfoot seem like they're floating. Like there's this one famous one on the Sasquatch Chronicles. He uses her as his opening bit now, where she's talking. He's like, "I'll never forget what I saw. It seemed the way he moved. It seemed like he was just floating down the beach." That happens. That is an extremely common thing with Bigfoot. And here's the thing about it. Most of this stuff, if it happened in a house, so if you heard rapping on the wood, like pop, 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 if you heard like grrr sounds, if you heard inarticulate noises, if you heard footsteps, you would say, "Oh, there's a ghost." But if you hear it in the woods, you say, "Oh, it's a Bigfoot." Right? And Joshua Cutchin even makes this connection. He says, they said poltergeist. What if this is a wilderness geist, like a wilderness ghost? What if because they're very clear. They say we don't really know what it is, but it is strange. It has all these. Joshua likes to say, look at the company these things keep. They're always around UFOs. They're always around these will-o'-the-wisps. They do poltergeist-like activity. People even say, when they have these weird encounters with them, that they're being haunted by these Bigfoot. You can leave offerings for Bigfoot, and Bigfoot will respond. He will get mad if you stop leaving the offerings. Timothy Renner, he describes how he had an ongoing offering ceremony with Bigfoot. He would go out into the woods outside of his house, and he would leave these stones, I believe there were stones, set up in different positions, and he'd come back later to see them moved and rearranged. And so he said, I began leaving offerings for Bigfoot, and they would always be gone. And, you could chalk that up to just animals come by and eat whatever he'd left. Probably so. He said, but then I started getting a little more brave. And he said, one day I said, I was going to ask for something. And he said, I went out there and I said, I would like, here's this stuff, and I would like a skull. Timothy's a bit of a weird fellow, but he collects skulls. He's one of these guys. All the Sasquatch people have a weird hobby, not including Sasquatch. And so he says, so I just asked for a skull, and I turned around, I started walking back, and I got it. He said, there in my pathway, which I didn't see coming in, was a groundhog skull, but not really what I wanted. Because it still had all the gore on it.
Ooh.
Like the head, like something had torn it off, but it was intact. I mean, I could scrape it off. He said, and I found it. He said he said this specifically. He said I found it in what you would call a fairy ring, like a ring of trees with the stones in the middle, which was always both in the Native American cultures and in the Native European cultures was always associated with spirits. A sort of ring of trees all the time. Okay, so he finds it in the middle of this thing. He says, I didn't take it because he said, and then I had a string of really bad luck, including being attacked by a rabid raccoon. And and so stuff just kept breaking. And I learned later that from folklore that if you ever ask, they said the number one thing the folklore people will tell you in like like if you look at Irish folklore or German folklore, it said, one, if you're interacting with spirits, don't ask for stuff. Just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two, if you do, take whatever they give you, because they'll get very mad and offended if you don't take it. And he said, well, I didn't. I should have been more specific. I wanted a clean skull and not just like a decapitated groundhog head. But he said, so I haven't asked Bigfoot for anything since. But the point is that Bigfoot, people will see Bigfoot and he looks like a gorilla or like an ape man, right?
Okay.
So but also he does a lot of spiritual type stuff. And the same motif is everywhere. Like here we call it Sasquatch or Bigfoot. In Australia, it's the Yowie. In sort of the Himalayas, it's the Yeti. Right? In European folklore tradition, it was the wild man. The wild man. Like and
What
so
about in the caves of Afghanistan, in Kandahar?
Yeah, it could be. I think that one uses. The thing about that one was he had a shield and a spear.
Okay.
So that doesn't. All right. So, and then the final bit that I'm going to tell you that really puts the nail in the coffin for this is a really weird thing. Such as die maids do all lead apes in hell. Samuel Rollins, 1602.
Say that again.
Such as die maids do all lead apes in hell. That's from a poem, Samuel Rollins, 1602. So such as thy maidens, such as thy virgins, all lead apes in hell. It's an Elizabethan proverb, which has its origin as far back as 1494 in a woodcut with Venus, the virgin, Venus is virgin, leading an ape, a cuckold, and an ass towards death. I know this seems like a non sequitur, but bear with me. So there's this woodcut in 1494. Before they had paper, really, they would carve stuff in wood, like a little, and you passed around. So it's this image of Venus, which means virgin, leading an ape, a cuckold, and an ass towards death, like a donkey, right? So that's the beginning of this proverb. That Shakespeare has a variant of this proverb in two different of his plays. In two different plays, he has a variant of this proverb as such as thy maids do lead apes in hell. So such as thy maidens lead apes in hell. Such as thy virgins lead apes in hell.
When you say,
right?
when in the woodcut, what's the cuckold? What's the cuckold in the? Is this like a guy who's?
It's a guy. It's a
somehow
guy.
identified as a cuckold. Okay.
Right. Correct. And then so he's leading a cuckold, an ape, and an ass towards towards a figure with like a scythe.
Okay. Okay.
The angel. Okay, you got it. Now, where does this come from? Some speculate maybe this was some anti-Catholic sentiment about celibate monks and nuns.
Mm-hmm.
It is approaching the time of the Reformation, so maybe that's building up. Maybe that's there. Maybe it's a jab at the perpetual virginity of Mary doctrine. Mm-hmm. Like, virgins, those who die maidens lead apes in hell. This is maybe bolstered by a few medieval depictions of Mary with baboons, which is, I don't know what they're trying to convey there, though. Like, right. Yeah. The context is lost on us of what that is. And that phrase, those such as thy maids do all lead apes in hell, apparently leading, quote unquote, probably a euphemism for having sex. Okay. Again, the decomposers always talk about sex. Wayne Sexton. They'll be like, so there's this idea being floated around that those who die virgins end up having to have sex with apes in hell.
Okay.
Okay, that's what it's getting to. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you, with that in mind, that proverb in mind that's floating around forever, I'm going to explain to you how, and this is explained in the Where the Footprints In book. I'm going to explain to you about Bigfoot's wife. Oh. So what happened is Timothy started, because Timothy is a longtime squatcher,
Mm-hmm.
and he got woke to this knowledge that if the stuff that Bigfoot was reported happened in the house, it would sound like a poltergeist. He said, now, wait a minute. What am I actually investigating here? Right? Because, hey, poltergeists leave footprints too. One of the primary methods of hunting for ghosts back in the Elizabethan times was you would leave powder on the floor and then look for footprints later.
Hmm.
All right. So these spiritual things can manifest. And if there's one takeaway from this, you need to get rid of the dichotomy in your mind between physical and spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. That's not anywhere. I'm not sure where that comes up. It's not like biblical. I mean, like who did Abraham eat with when the three angels came to him? If they're just spirit beings.
Right.
Who did Jacob wrestle with? Right.
Yeah.
They can have physical. Okay. So leave that aside for a minute. All right. So there's this constantly over and over again. If you ask people like, well, what else weird? Like, hey, I have a Bigfoot encounter. Okay. What else weird? Well, I don't know. There's this white lady. And this really got started on the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast where Tim really picked this up. It was called the episode's called "We Need Help," and there's these two brothers that kept getting terrorized by Bigfoot haunting.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, and they called back later and they said, "How's it going?" I said, "Well, there's been some changes. We were driving down the road and we saw this woman in a white dress. She was walking down the side of the road. She seemed, like a normal woman, but she was very tall, like a tall man tall. And she had really big shoes, like clown shoes on. And we stopped. I said, and I was worried. We were worried about her, because she's walking out here in the middle of the night, and we've known these weird creatures are around, and it's not a safe area. And so I said, "Lady, are you okay?" No response. She keeps walking. They're in their truck, pulling up beside her. "Lady, excuse me, are you fine? Lady, do you need help?" No response. And he said, eventually he got in his mind. He said, "I command you to stop." And he said she stopped. She turned around, looked at him and smiled. And then she just sort of vanished. Right?
Ooh.
And so then people started writing into the Sasquatch forums. And they were like, I didn't want to say anything because it seems weird, but I've seen the white lady too. And then people were like, and then Timothy went to one guy who had a Bigfoot sighting, and he said, "Okay, well, what else weird?" He said, "Well, I got these photos of these ghosts. You want to see them?" And Tim's like, "Well, of course I want to see photos of your ghosts." And so, a lot of them were, he said, a lot of them were the standard, sort of vague mist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it could be anything. He said, he got one of them. He pulled it up and he said, very clearly, it was the classic lady in white ghost. The lady in white is the most common ghost motif, right? It was just behind him in the mirror, just this figure of what looks to be a lady wearing a white dress. Okay, virgin white, right? That's the color. Okay. Those who die virgins do lead apes in hell. All right. So, what if, okay, and again, Kenneth Grant, who was a student of Crowley's, again bringing up Crowley, he said, quote, "Menstruating women bring forth monsters." I know this is weird. I'm going to bring this all together. We connected some dots here.
I'm so not tracking, but keep going.
I know. You know the Shakespeare play Much Ado About Nothing?
Uh-huh.
That's Much Ado About women. Because men have something between their legs and women have nothing. Much Ado About Nothing.
Oh.
That's what that's from. It's a sex joke. There's all these sex jokes. The Waynell Sexton. It just over and over again. All right. So one of Crowley's students, who is the founder of modern Western magic, Aleister Crowley, he said, "Menstruating women shall bring forth monsters." Why is this? Well, it's something to do with the void. So in a mystical sense, in a metaphorical sense, in a mythological sense, right? Stuff comes out of nothing, right? Creatio ex nihilo, creation out of nothing.
Right.
Much ado about nothing. So women are the void, which is filled, and then life comes forth in a really actual physical way.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this idea, and so Grant, the student of Crowley, felt that when he said menstruating women shall bring forth monsters, the particular monster they bring forth, he called the ape of Thoth. Thoth was a Egyptian god, the ape of Thoth.
Mm-hmm.
And the ape of Thoth was said to utter no human sound, but wild, monstrous speech. Oh yeah, you see how I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is another weird one that gets weird washed. Many women sightings of Bigfoot are when they're, if you ask them these, again, it's weird. People don't ask because it's a weird question to ask, but it's like, and what was your menstruation cycle at the time? Right. It's when they're on their periods.
Oh, weird.
And I know that seems super weird, and it is. And so the flesh and blood people have described that as, because the flesh and blood people know this, and they say, well, there's two explanations they offer. Well, Bigfoots are attracted, they smell the blood. Mm-hmm. That brings them around, which some animals can smell blood, but, or they say they're attracted to the sex pheromones. Because they say they're close enough to humans that they have attraction for human females scent, maybe.
Right.
But they do super acknowledge that this is a thing, that the Bigfoots are seen around menstruating women more. Like if you want to maximize your Bigfoot potential sightings, go camping with a woman on her period in northern Washington. All right, make sure that's a standard thing that squatchers have known for a long time.
Okay.
So the woman in white, that's seen around them, right? Timothy Renner got to digging, and that is all over the place. The Russians had a Bigfoot character, I believe called Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga had a helper or a wife who was either an old hag or a young woman who almost always wore white. In England, there was the apple tree man. The apple tree man was a wild man who attacked people in the orchards or around the orchards, and he had a helper that was a woman in white. The Welsh banshee was equivalent. It's sort of the Welsh banshee was a woman that would scream about death, a portent of death that would come around, and do all the Bigfoot stuff. Knock on your windows, climb on the roof, throw rocks, right? All of this, even it comes up just sort of like psychologically. Like there was a movie called Willow Creek by Bobcat Goldthwait. You know him? He was a comedian.
Yeah.
He made a Bigfoot movie called Willow Creek, and in that, Bigfoot captures a woman, a fair maiden, and she's shown in the woods later having been taken. She's wearing only her white underwear. Right? So even sort of like archetypically, it just comes up through in art.
Right.
It just is sort of like, it's instinctually felt. The wild man takes the virgin. Right? So you see them, they're paired.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so the woman in white connection to the Bigfoot, again, Baba Yaga, the Russian one, it's in the apple tree man, the banshees, and now it's apparent that it's also with American Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. There's something. There are just like this. Shiva comes on and he's got all his arms, and if there's one saying it's okay, there's actual spiritual forces in the world, and you can leave them offerings, and they can interact with you, and they do weird symbolic things about voids and creation, because that's how creation actually, that's how the world is actually structured. If you get down to it, it's based on these sort of the metaphysics behind the physics. Mm-hmm. Metaphysics means after physics. So you got your physics, and they say, okay, but why that, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's all this symbolic stuff, and the American Sasquatch has gotten more wild as we've gotten more tame. So back in the frontier days, he was a wild man, but he sometimes would wear clothes, and sometimes he had a musket. Big hairy man out in the woods. He'd do all the same stuff, throw rocks at people, but when they saw him, he's wearing clothes. Maybe had a musket, maybe a hat. Mm-hmm. Giant still, but as we've gotten more the archetype of the wild man gets more wild as people get more removed from nature. So make of that what you will. Um, but there are footprints that appear in the woods that are quite big. There are repeated these, and again, the woman with clown shoes, big feet, right?
Yeah.
The big feet, woman in white, and these people. That's the thing about it is, and I'm not being mean. I'm just these people are not well read enough to have made this up.
Right.
You see what I mean? Like they wouldn't to make up the woman in white, and then you read around and like, oh, that is also the exact thing that happened in Welsh folklore and in Russian folklore and in like the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And even it's even in African folklore and the African Americans during early America, they talked about this is maybe the origin of the term jack-o'-lantern. It's not jack-o'-lanterns were originally turnips, like you take a turnip and you hollow it out and put a candle in it. Mm-hmm. That goes back to way older medieval times. But the term jack-o'-lantern was this hairy guy that would jump around the swamps of Florida and steal people in the night, and they had all the same connections were there. And the African Americans would talk about the jack-o'-lantern. And so it's been for hundreds and hundreds of years, the same sort of weird sighting in the woods comes up, the same big leaving of footprints, and this same woman in white thing appears, and you can interact with it like you do a folkloric entity, like a fairy, like an elf. Sometimes he shows up very, very physical, and sometimes not. It's all very strange. I just wanted the people to realize that Bigfoot is real, but also not an animal.
Whoa. This is breaking my mind right now. So do you have a well-formed opinion of what you think Bigfoot is? Or is it just sort of, this stuff is freaky and I don't know?
I believe Bigfoot is some sort of forest spirit.
Okay.
Like he's the wild man of the woods. And what now? Because there are once you key into what a spirit is, it's like, oh, of course they're spirits. Like people talk about spirits and they're like, it's some eerie fairy thing. But well, I think we've talked about that at one point, but we'll explain that later. But once you key into what a spirit is, it's like it makes absolute sense that they're spirits. Because spirits are basically patterns, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got atoms and molecules, but then they form different forms. Like I'm made of the same stuff a tree is made of, basically carbon, water, nitrogen, oxygen. But my atoms are doing a different dance than the atoms of a tree. They're conforming to a different pattern, right? And so the patterns persist and so there's a pattern of the wood, there's a pattern of the sea, there's a pattern of mountain ranges, mm-hmm. right? And these patterns may coalesce some places in like more specific entities, which I know is a wild suggestion, mm-hmm. but it happens so often. Like there's so many Bigfoot sightings. There's every day there's Bigfoot sightings, and they always match up. They're always extremely similar between people that have no knowledge about how this could be, and yet Bigfoot constantly evades capture. There is no body. There's all this weird stuff associated with them, and you want to get really weird. I bring up the UFO connection again. Every single case, 100% of the time, wherein a Bigfoot is said to have been killed. Like someone says, I shot one. I got the body. I'm going to show it to everybody. Mm-hmm. The body is always then later missing. And the photos that they claim to have taken are always gone. You can say, well, that's a hoax. And you say, yeah, I think that probably would be a hoax, except that in a very high number of these cases, these people, again, have the same explanation for what happened. And it's that two guys come by with very official sounding things and say, hey, we need to take this because of reasons. And they're very sort of implicitly threatening. And you say, well, that's a Men in Black encounter. And it is, except with Bigfoot, the Men in Black are wearing flannel.
They're wearing flannel?
They come to your door, and they are, the guys that take away the Bigfoot evidence are one of there's always a short one and a tall one, and they're both wearing plaid.
Oh man.
and so it's the same thing again as the UFO thing. Like, it keeps repeating. And what I'm saying is these patterns that continue to repeat, and they exist across centuries. That's because there's something real behind them, but it's not necessarily a quote unquote physical thing. Right? I mean, think about it. People, you had no problem in the past thinking that an angel would take a physical form and appear to you and talk with you.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Maybe the angel appears and he just likes to wear plaid. I don't know.
Oh man,
Maybe
you're
he likes to
really
dress like a G-man, like a government agent, wearing all black.
I really didn't expect the Bigfoot episode to really hurt my brain so much. But it really it's the thought did cross my mind when you're talking about the embodiment of the forest pattern, like the living spirit of the forest or whatever, which is, it sounds like what you were trying to get at. It made me think, like, if you think about the difference between the wilderness and, say, a garden, and you try to personify those things, it's like the spirit of the wilderness with all the chaos and danger and disorder. I mean, I would kind of Green Man, Bigfooty, that fits. You know,
Green Man, yeah.
The character of the forest. And then if you were to take a garden, okay, and highly an ordered, thoughtful, intentional, peaceful, productive place, and try to coalesce that into a living personality, I would see a human.
Right, or maybe like a what most people would often have in folklore seen around their gardens is little fairies, like little nice little flower-like beings,
like busy little things.
Yeah, little flower-like beings and that's what I'm trying to get at is, like, if you take a thing like the sea or a mountain or a river, and then you were to try and personify that, the image in your mind that comes up is very similar to the image in your mind that would come up in anybody's mind. And that image actually exists and does its own stuff. And that's why, and that's perfectly consistent with people of religious faith, because like Paul never denies that at all. He says, like, yeah, they're daemons. They're, the demon connotation has been that they're all evil, right? But in Greek, daemon meant sort of like just spirit of the world, sort of like a kami in Japanese. The river has a daemon and the tree has a daemon, which is like a spirit. And Paul was like, yeah, there are daemons, but don't worship them. Right. But he never denied that they existed. And that's because he had they had a very much more sort of spiritual view of the world, which we're trying to get back to. But yeah, as such as die maids do all lead apes in hell. So be careful, women.
Don't die a virgin? Is that is that the moral? Is that the moral of the episode?
Don't die a virgin, or you'll have to have sex with Bigfoot for eternity.
Get married quick.
No, I don't know why but I'm just saying it's a weird coincidence that this would go back as far as the 1400s of like maidens, women in white with apes in places that did not even have apes natively. It's so weird.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah. Remember, don't fear the decomposers. Bigfoot's a forest spirit.
Yep. I'm going to start calling them that. The decomposers.
That's because that's what they are. Yeah, that's what they are. See, that now maybe you understand the lyrics of our song a little bit more. Yes, I talk like a samurai. Don't hold it against me. I'm just that kind of guy. I know that we will get by. I hope we will. Knock on wood. Because that's what they do. So we're gonna finish that album sometime. All right. We got a Mothman. We got a Sasquatch. If anyone has any tips for any lyrics for another song, I think I want to do one of UFOs with Betty and Barney Hill. From the perspective of Betty and Barney Hill.
You need to do a Kentucky Goblin song.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
With banjos.
Yeah.
Bluegrass,
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, keep your third eye on the sky.
What?